Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Nate.
Hey, Jack.
Since we're in the middle of this COVID-19, Nate thought that would be a good idea for us as we're in the midst of this uncertainty, or certainly until it clears up, that we would do an ongoing special report to address how things are going here at 5210. So we are going to address, if I can get the slides to go, these four things: regulations or changes there, collections, any other risk or exposure that we have, and then our asset management plan. So Nate, why don't you begin with the regulations or changes that could impact the portfolio?
Yes, since our last special report, well, let me back up. From the beginning, there's been 16 executive total orders from Governor Ducey regarding COVID-19. The first one we really touched on was the writ of restitution. But the only other one really of all those to discuss was an executive order that came out on March 30th, which directed every closure of community pools in the state of Arizona. So we have two parks that we've got to close our community pools down. Not a big deal. At the end of the day, it actually could benefit us. The bad news is we've got some upset residents. The good news is we're shutting down all our pool heaters, so we're saving some money. So from a regulations perspective, that's the only big change that we've seen that really impacts us down at the property level.
Okay, talk about rent collections.
We have approximately 300 paying residents across our entire portfolio. I'll just give you a little bit of color on what we normally see and how things have changed over the last really 2 weeks in April's collections. We have, in general, 6 to 8 residents that pay late on a regular basis. They get caught up and they pay their late fees. But since we implemented our CRD program, we have 4 current residents that are approved and currently in the CRD program, which represents less than 1% of our total gross revenue across the entire portfolio of 4 parks. Next month, I will expect to see that number tick up. April wasn't a bad month. A lot of our residents were able to pay. They hadn't necessarily been impacted. And if they had a little bit of money in savings where they're able to pay their lot rent. Next month, I'll expect to see changes. I wouldn't doubt that number could double, but even at that, we're talking 6 or 8 residents total. And keep in mind, when we put this program together, it wasn't free lot rent, it was deferred. So we're actually going to be able to get that back in theory by the end of the year. So there's a little bit of good news here, though. You know, in the midst of all this, we've got other parts of our programs that are working. If you can believe it or not, we've got 2 homes in contract right now that have come across the table over the last week. One's for a purchase of a home that's cash, and another one's going to be one where we're carrying paper. But in the midst of all this, with people who can't pay their lot rent, we've got more activity for people buying homes now and rentals than we've had in a long time. Even though we've only got half a dozen or so rentals, we're getting a ton of calls, and we're actually able to convert those rental calls into home sales. So we've got a ton of activity, and it's actually working really well for us right now.
Let's talk about other risk or other exposure we have.
Yeah, I think there's 2 spots where we've seen an impact. Number one, I have a maintenance individual at one of our parks who has reported that he actually has COVID-19. So he's been on the sidelines in his home for the last week and a half. I expect him there for maybe another half a week or a week or so. What that really means is we're getting behind on a few maintenance related items. We've had to cobble together a small group of guys that could help us do odds and ends things. And then the other thing that was impactful was we have our home rehab team. They've actually had to tend to their family. So that's actually at a standstill. It's been at a standstill for right at about 2 weeks now. So we're actually in the process of looking for a replacement team just because we're not sure how long they're going to be out. So it could actually end up benefiting us because in the process, I'm hoping to find 1 or 2 teams that would actually help us speed up production. So those are the really 2 big impacts that we've seen down at our property that is outside of rent collections.
Okay, talk about asset management, the current plan and your adjustments that you intend to make.
Yeah, so the short story is our plan is working, and it's working really, really well. We're in contact with all of our residents, and we're holding their hand through this entire process. We're getting rent deferral agreements. So they're coming to us, we're filling out the proper paperwork. It's all legal, it's attached to their leases. So we're going to be able to hold their feet to the fire if they do come to us, and they are. And the individual that we put in charge of reaching out to our residents and helping them walk through the process of, getting unemployment, reaching out to other people in town who are providing assistance, it's working, and our residents really appreciate it. So it's a bit of a PR thing as well. So not only are we helping them to pay the rent for us, but I think everybody really, really genuinely appreciates that. And that sentiment goes a long way in our parks and our communities, and people want to be there and they recognize that. So it's been really good.
Okay. Well, in addition to that, was there any other things that you wanted to add with this update, Nate?
I don't think so, Jack. I think everything's going as expected, and time will tell. Next month, about this time, will be a big telltale sign for us on how our residents are being impacted. But we are way out in front of this. I'm excited about where we're at. My team is performing exceptionally well. They've been trained really well, and they've been working like clockwork. So this is going great. So far, so good.
Okay. Well, Nate, thanks a ton. I know it's important that the investors hear it straight from the horse's mouth. So thank you for taking the time to do this.
You got it.
We'll promise to continue to do these as an update is warranted. So thanks again, Nate, and thanks to everyone else.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, guys.